Thank you for having me. And it's such a pleasure to see all of you. And I'm hoping that this is not just a one way talk. I'm expecting a lot of you to participate and ask me questions as well. That would really make it a very sort of worthwhile session as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for also allowing me to have my team attending this. They're a mix of designers as well as writers and business strategy people. And my colleague Rahul, who heads the business, is also going to be part of this presentation. So, if that's okay, we can move ahead. We can start with the presentation. So, I think the way it's going to go is share some slides with you, talk over the slides, explain to you the way we think, the way we work, and how this could possibly spark off some thinking in your own minds as to how it would help you in your own projects and in your career ahead as to how we could use design thinking and design methodologies for the kind of jobs that you'll be pursuing, the career paths that you'll be pursuing. So, Rahul, should we start?
Yep. Sure, Preeti. Just a moment, just sharing the screen.
So these are final year students. Piyush?
A mix of first and second year students. We have
First.
two batches. The freshers have just joined in. We started in August.
I see. This is a 2-year course?
It's a 2 years full-time course. Yeah. And the only course in India recognized by AICTE, the business design. We are the pioneers in India to launch this course as early as 2006.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Rahul, do you want to just talk a little bit about us and then?
Good evening, everyone. We are VGC, Vyas Genetic Creative. And for those of you who don't know about us, we're one of India's top integrated design and communication agencies. We were founded in 1997, or 25 years ago. And through these 25 years, we worked with hundreds of clients across the country, a few abroad as well, on a range of exciting exercises, from brand building to sustaining brands, from helping them communicate and connect with their audiences, to also defining various assets for those brands themselves. While we've had a physical presence in Delhi earlier, Bombay, and in Bangalore, we've now moved to more of a remote hybrid kind of working situation. In fact, a lot of my team members are in different places, as am I. I'm in Bangalore, and the rest of the team are also spread over. And through these years, like I mentioned, we've done a lot of different work, different exercises, different projects for different kinds of clients. Here's a quick 2-minute look at some of that. So these are just some glimpses of our offices that are temporarily shut. We're in Lower Parel in Bombay, Indiranagar in Bangalore, and as you can see, we're a bunch of colorful, eclectic creatives that are bound by a passion to do great work. Here are a few of the brands that we've created. Some are household names like the Aditya Birla Group, the Times of India, Linen Club, Indian Institute of Science. We work with all sorts of brands, both big and small, on a range of exercises. So on your left, what you're seeing are really strategic branding projects where we've been involved right from the inception of the brand, or we've been involved, when it came to rebranding or refreshing the brand in a certain extent. And as a full-fledged integrated creative agency, we also undertake exercises to help brands communicate better, connect better, and interact better with their audiences through different mediums, from print to out of home to digital and anything else in between. So these are some of the brands that we've worked with. Some of them, again, are very familiar, very popular brands, from Jealous 21 to Pantaloons, from Apollo Hospitals to Grazia, and so on. So in terms of the business of branding, what it really is about, and how we essentially sort of build brands, let's start with something simple as to what is a brand. So Preeti, if you could sort of tell us, what really are brands, how are they made, and how do you build them? And then I have a few support slides that can help you with this.
So you can continue with the support slides. So I think a lot of people think that a brand is a logo, but a brand is not just a logo. It's not that little graphic element which sits on your visiting card, let's say, or your email signature. What it is that it's really who you are. It's really your identity, plus the kind of imagery that you want to use to be perceived in you. It's very important that this is who I am, and I want people to understand who I am and look at me from a certain perspective, and that this is really what comes together to become a brand. Okay, and simply put, a brand is really the most valuable asset that any company can have. Now, this is something which a lot of people understand, but very few actually implement. And that for us as designers is always a bit of a sad story, because we're always trying to push people to really notch up their understanding about the power of branding and why it should be taken very seriously and why it should be integrated into all the management processes. So, and another very important thing, especially in India, I think, is that we need to understand that a brand is not just what is visible to the outside world, which is the logo or anything else you might have put forward, communication and so on. So that's not really, of course it is, but it will not be a robust exercise. It will not be an effective exercise, and certainly it will not come across like a genuine message if you have not sorted out a lot of the elements which are not visible to the outside world. What is it that you're going to communicate? Identifying exactly what our DNA is. What is it that we are doing? What is it that we want to do it? And how do we want to go about doing it, etc., etc. These are very important steps which are possibly invisible to the outside world, which need to be understood. So this is really what comes together in forming the DNA of a company. And once the DNA is identified, not just identified, but also imbibed, understood, and absorbed by everyone. What I mean by everyone is, every single person of that organization needs to be a brand ambassador. There are companies who actually make sure that everyone, for example, I think it's 3M, they want to stand for innovation, and Piyush mentioned innovation. And how does one integrate innovation into the very sort of the fabric of the company is really by getting everyone involved, including the janitor. Okay, so every month, even the janitor would be required to make some contribution, some ideation about how to improve. It could be a product, it could be a service, it could be anything. But that's really how you need to make sure that everyone becomes a brand ambassador, and you live by the philosophy of what you have set out as your charter. So this is really a bit about what that should be. So essentially, everything and anything that a company does is a branding opportunity. Okay, it's not just a film that you put out on YouTube or a little social media that you do. It's every interface, every email you send, every phone call you receive, every message you send on WhatsApp. Every interface is an opportunity to talk about your brand, and so it's important to align your branding processes to an extent that it becomes sort of second nature in terms of what's the messaging that you're going to be putting out. So your external internal brand must be aligned, therefore, that your people deliver on the brand promise. So up to 80% of your brand's future revenue is going to come from 20% of your current customers. It's very, very important that whatever your brand promises is sustained in a meaningful way. The communication is sustained. There's a certain consistency in your messaging. And there isn't, a lot of times we see messaging that comes out from companies which are random and erratic. So if you have absorbed the process well, you're going to make sure that everything that comes out doesn't stray away from your DNA, and therefore the messaging remains authentic and true, and people believe in it that much more. Now, what's important is that today, in millennials, and of course you would be all Gen Z, which is even more important, that how you consume information, how you make opinions, how you build opinions. That's very, very important for companies to take on board. So what is put out in different media, like in the online content, is it something that is consistent? And if it is indeed consistent, then is it going to be driving loyalty to the brand? And increasingly, brands are also expected to take a position in the world, to own a philosophy. These are again things which are important for a company to understand. And this is again why I'm saying all of this is because a brand is again just 2 or 3 elements, but it's the entire universe that you are going to be occupying. So brands are expected to engage their audiences in meaningful, and it's a conversation. It's a two-way opportunity. You speak, and the brand also receives. And once it receives, it learns. And once it learns, it could actually adapt and talk about new ways of doing things. So therefore, transparency becomes key to the process. So the most important thing, of course, is that your brand is the real differentiator. So you need to work very, very hard. At A, what you want to become, and B, what the world is saying about themselves. Because in that ocean of messaging, you want to stand apart, and you want to own something which is truly differentiated, which is truly something that you can own, and authentically so. So it needs to be a well-crafted charter to figure out what your vision statement is, what your brand charter is going to be, but that's how the world will perceive you eventually.
So we know now what a brand is, but what makes a successful brand, and how do we at VGC build successful brands? Could you tell the audience a little bit more about that?
Sure, you can keep rolling this. So I think our approach to brand building is, first of all, designomics is something which I very, very strongly believe in. And I think Piyush mentioned to talk a little bit about designomics. So I'm going to, spend a few more minutes here than I usually do. So designomics as a thought and a process came into being after a trip which I made to Japan. I was part of a delegation from India, which was sent to Tokyo to understand their design awards, which is the Good Design Awards, and the Good Design Awards are have been have been around since the mid 50s, 1950s. Okay, now which is this is remarkable because not just because that there was so much awareness about design, but they were instituted by the government of Japan and not the designers of Japan, not even the industry of Japan. Now, why did they do that? So Japan's economy had completely been shattered post the Second World War. Hiroshima had happened, and the Made in Japan brand was a real, at one point in time, Made in India brand was very bad, and Made in Japan brand was about as bad, if you can believe that. The 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 uh, uh, the country heads, they decided that they needed to do something about pulling the economy back. And they felt that it was going to be on the back of good design, because good design is really when you make good products. And those were the days that was the manufacturing era. And they felt that if they could contribute in the products the world wanted, automobiles and so on, then the economy would pick up. And so they studied the best design practices around the world. And then they encouraged Japanese businesses to integrate design studios within the companies, employ designers, and that's really how the good design mark of Japan was given birth to. Today, it's become an incredibly important award for Japan. It has about 80% recognition from the population, the Japanese population. But most importantly, what it has done is it's brought back the economy from the dead. I'm not saying that's the only thing that did that, but certainly it was seen as a very, very important piece in the puzzle to help, bring the Japanese economy back and set it up. So I think that that's really what is the ignition point for me is that, whilst being part of the India Design Council, we did institute a good design mark for India, uh, but I felt that much more could be done. So I created this property called Designomics because for me, good design is good business, and you do profit from design, and it is kind of it's a design thinking process, and it's a design doing process as well, because no thinking can actually. It's not just enough to think. It's very important to think because that's really how you create ideas and innovations and so on. But once you've thought through your ideas, you must do your ideas. And it's very important that you then create the mechanisms and the processes, put in the processes that can walk that design thinking. It could sometimes be a design project, it could be a design manifestation, it could be a business process or a business manifestation. End of the day, that is really what I thought should be the fundamental philosophy of designomics. I did put together. I worked with Bloomberg, and I curated a show where I interviewed not designers, because designers know the importance of design. It's a business people, the captains of businesses who have I interviewed them, the ones who have understood the power of design and had implemented and continue to implement design in across board. So, for example, Anand Mahindra, is very, very serious about design, and as you know, his automobiles are integrate a lot of these design processes. He has set in a lot of research around, not just in India, but I think abroad as well. He employs designers not just in India but abroad as well to make sure that his automobiles have a certain kind of personality, a certain kind of perfection in performance, and so on. Likewise, Kumar Mangalam Birla, who ventured into his business trajectory with largely commodity businesses, decided that he was going to take branding of his group very seriously, even though at that point in time he hardly integrated with any did not have any consumer-facing businesses at that point in time. And Kishore Biani has gone on record saying that, tomorrow belongs to designers, yesterday belonged to, management students. And so, every one of these people that I interviewed, had a very, very strong point of view on design, and the great evangelists, great believers in the design processes, and made sure that their organizations followed that. So I then also figured that it was important to proliferate that thinking, not just amongst the captains of industry, but also down the line, amongst other kind of businesses, engage with business people at different levels in different organizations. So I instituted the Designomics Awards, which were again given. These design awards were given to business people who had, again, used design thinking and design processes and design talent into creating success stories. So each one of these were case studies. So they would tell us about what they did, why they did, and how effective it was. And basis that, these awards were given to various entities. So I think this is really what was Designomics. Designomics is also something which I think instinctively VGC has always owned. Design thinking before it became fashionable was something which we were already practicing. So, and why do we think that is important? Is because of these four processes that we put in. In fact, because of the importance, we have broken it up into the processes which are easy for everyone to understand. One is immersion. It's very important that when you take on a branding project or a design thinking project, you first understand the context. You need to do research. First of all, understand the business, understand the issues, the challenges, understand the environment, understand the competition, and very, very importantly, understand also what is going to be the tomorrow for you. I mean, today you might be here, but what is your vision for tomorrow? So all of this is something that as design thinkers is very, very important to understand and very, very important to imbibe. One of the things that the design thinking process talks about is empathy. And empathy is really all about this process, because once you understand this process, understand who you're talking to, you immediately start shifting your vantage point to a place of what is really the issue at hand, what's the real issue at hand, not just the issue that has been articulated or voiced prima facie, but once we actually get into the depths of this, we sometimes we sometimes are aware that the issues were something else entirely, and that could possibly throw up insights into the kind of strategic route which we should take. So the step 2 is really about strategy. So these insights give us an idea about what strategy processes we should follow. We would then analyze the data. We would understand from an empathy perspective, what could be the solution, what was the assumed solution, could be very different from an unexpected path that we might want to take to find a completely different kind of a solution altogether. So from the immersion to strategy is a very interesting research-based, rather cerebral process. Very vibrant, very interesting, but crucial to any solution that you would be giving. Once you do this, for us as designers, then we can understand what should be the visual experience, what should be the communication experience, how should this be manifested across different touch points. Okay. If it's a pure design thinking process, and if you might be thinking of a design process, it could be a production line. It could be a management thinking process, but all of this then starts getting manifested, and the blueprint starts getting developed at stage 3. Okay, so first is awareness based on research and understanding. The second is drawing insights, and then creating modules and even prototypes to see if what could possibly work out, learning from that, perfecting that. And once you're absolutely sure about that, you then roll it out And then you actually then engage with your target audience by launching it. Now here a target audience could be consumers at large. It could be customers. It could be different pools of customers. For example, when we take a corporate entity, you're talking to different pools of customers. You're talking to maybe investors, and they require a certain kind of messaging. You're talking to the end consumer, and depending upon the age group, they might require different kind of messaging. You could be talking to media and influencers, and they again require a different kind of communication. So you need to then understand A, the overall aura, B, the sub-messaging, the subtext that you're going to create for individual audiences, but you have to make sure that all of this is still belonging to the same universe that you've identified for your brand. Because the minute you start straying from that, then the robustness of the brand, the understanding of the brand starts getting diluted, which is something which you don't want. Because the brand process is something that you are investing in every single day. And that's a long process. It's not just going to happen overnight. So it's very important that you're in it for the long haul. You make sure that it's not just a flash in the pan, whatever you're doing, that there has to be consistency. And somebody internally needs to be aligned, and somebody internally needs to be made responsible to make sure that this process continues effortlessly, seamlessly. Of course, feedback will continue to come. It's a synergistic process, learning from the outside world, adapting internally, and then again expressing out into the world. So this is a symbiotic process, a synergistic process. So this is really the kind of process that we follow, and which would hold you in good stead as well once you step out into the world and into your jobs. This is a brand compass. So this is the process that we follow before we then fill up a brand compass. So the brand is, if you see the central band, it's really about identifying your core values, your brand personality, what could be the symbols, etc. What should be your brand archetype? There's several archetypes that exist. So which one do you align the best with? And what should be the tone of voice for the visuals? What should be the payoff, and so on? And most importantly, it should be based on these elements, which is that you don't want to be what everybody is, which is table stakes. You want to make sure that you understand your limitations and limitations of the outside world. And various other elements here, which we can maybe at some other point take you through the details of this through case study. Once we do that, it's very important to then, identify and articulate the vision statement and the mission statement. So this is the way. This is what. Sorry, Piyush, you said something.
No, go ahead. There was some disturbance. Go ahead. Preeti, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Rahul, are you sharing or?
Yeah, Preeti. Just moving to the next question. So my next question is really in the context of continuity and change. How have brands started communicating differently? What's next and how has it evolved? So this is what it is today, but could you explain to us what's next?
Are you talking about the whole new universe that's opening up for us? Is that what you're aiming for? So I think that we're moving from a rather linear world to a web world. I don't mean just the World Wide Web, but everything is so completely interconnected, and there's so many different audiences that are being engaged. And it's so important to, therefore, the branding exercise and this brand charter becomes very important. And also the communicating to the individual audiences, the storytelling, the narratives, all of these things become extremely important. Why we're kind of dwelling upon this is that every level of this requires an extent of innovation that you would be required to bring to the table. And it's important to take into cognizance these various pools of, opportunities. For example, today, we need to talk about sustainability, in order to become a good brand. We need to talk about innovation We need to talk about the kind of business initiatives. We need to talk about employee involvement and employee engagement processes which a companies do in order to be taken as a serious brand. The brand needs to also talk about its social impact stories. And of course, then you have the mainline advertising, then you need to have branded content, social media stories, external communication. So this is the these are the ingredients of this brand soup, you know, which which requires attention. Today, if you want to be seen as a robust brand, you need to be covering all these bases.
How's the business of branding changed, and how, in some ways, has it stayed the same?
I think, you know, brand essentially, the what you need to do can never change. It's just the hows that have changed. And because you're living in a very complex consumer world, you know, so it's adding layers and dimensions to the brand building process, which before you didn't have. So therefore, it was a simpler world that we lived in, but no longer, you know. I mean, there are brands who are simultaneously talking to the baby boomers all the way to Gen Z. For example, take a telecom brand, will do that. You know. But there are some brands who will focus on maybe the millennial and Gen Z and so on. So there are, you know, all of this sort of is important. So when you have to identify what is the one message that you want to own for yourself, because that's your DNA. But then when you investigate the people that you're talking to, and see the kind of shifts and changes in the mindsets, preferences, and the drivers, through which they're making choices. You know, which are the brands they will steer away from, which are the brands they will actually adhere to and be loyal to, perhaps even. You know, or the kind of brands, or the kind of conversations that would attract them. All of that has changed tremendously, tremendously. If there's anything here you want to dwell on, please do so, Rahul.
Not really. Just would like to understand how Gen Z, in fact, most of the audience today belong to that demographic. How has branding and communication changed for Gen Z as compared to any other generation before that?
So I think the Gen Z is a generation which has been, you know, it's born into the digital world. You know, it comes to them as it comes to you. Them, I'm saying, comes to all of you second nature. That is the world you lived in. Some of us have seen transitions to come to where we are, whereas you were kind of you were born into it. You know, so therefore you are digital natives. Your behavior is that, you know, you really are into, you know, you're sort of so driven by your communities. And the language, the grammar you speak in your communities in the digital world is very important to you. It could make or break you. It could teach you, it could destroy you. It is a place where you have relationships, your dialogues, and that, in a sense, is really a huge part of your reality is vested over there. And what is it that Gen Z, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm telling you who you are, whereas I might be wrong. So please correct me if you think that I've left out anything, or there's something else that needs to be said. Is that certainly you're looking for something that's unique, something that's unlimited, and something, and which is very important, which I think very important, is that Gen Z tends to be ethical. Gen Z tends to be people who want to take a position, however wrong or right, but they take passionate positions in life, you know, and that is a big differentiator. So, guys, have we got you right? Raise your hands if we've got you right. Okay, those are a few hands going up. And if there's something that hasn't happened, then you please reserve that statement for later. So I think ESG, right? I think
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about ESG. Brands are dwelling a lot about ESG, which means environmental, societal, and governance, which means taking a stand on something. And brands are also becoming woke. Could you tell us a little bit more about this trend?
So I think that, well, Vogue, again, I want to reach out to the audience. Raise your hands if you're aware of the world of Vogue. You are. Yes? Can I see some more hands or not really? Oh, they are. So, I don't know, Rahul, if I need to reach to the converted, but essentially, brands which I think are trying to do right, to do good, has they have make a they take a stand about issues, whether it's gender neutrality, inclusivity, etc., etc. So there is a whole movement out there which has kind of been I would say a precursor. I think companies have understood also that it's very, very important to take on board these issues, whereas before they were not seen as very important. So, you know, uh, I think that brands are therefore required to make sure that they're touching upon. Sorry, you jumped some slides.
Sorry.
So, do you want to go to the next slide, please? So, I think that the global movement championed by millennials is not a way of life for the next generation, Gen Z, who are naturally aligned to being socially united, responsible, which is what we said. Go to the next slide, please.
There's some numbers and figures to sort of.
Yeah, but I want to talk a little bit about ESG. So are we on that slide here?
No, so I don't have a visual for that, Preeti. You'll have to.
Okay, so ESG is something I want to talk a little bit about. Okay, so I think that whereas for the longest time, governance was something for companies which was very, very important, but increasingly, environmental issues and social issues are really getting put on put on the table much more than before. I think that that is again something that's very important. And as management students, you need to understand that a lot of your thinking and innovation would be required to be in that stream, because in the most of the annual reports that we recently designed, Rahul, they all actually spoke about ESG on its cover. Every company is talking about ESG, and this is becoming very, very important. So I think Piyush, enough about this. Shall we take a break and you want to ask some questions?
Yeah, students are free to ask questions. I have 2 points, Preeti. Uh, One is, can you enlighten our students on how the businesses have benefited? See, these are basically PGDM students into MBA management degrees. They'll be interested more in how businesses have benefited from good design. So, some sort of an insight into what sort of good design has helped businesses grow, or some designomics award winners examples, if you can talk of. If you don't have the visuals, it's okay. You can talk of XYZ benefiting in so and so way because their designs excelled in this way. Some sort of a real life example would help them get a better view of whatever you've already said. Yeah,
Sure.
Preeti.
Rahul, we have some slides, or should we just show this talk?
I can pull out a case study or two. I have them right here. So whichever one you'd like me to. Yeah.
Which one do you have?
I have ABG, I have Bitsom, I have Linen Club, I have all of that.
Is it some?
Bitsom? Okay, just a second.
Students, this is
So,
going to be interesting for you all also. You can imbibe this and connect it with your studies and the projects that are coming as a part of your academics. Please witness this carefully. Yeah, go ahead, Preeti.
yeah. Rahul, in fact, just introduce the project quickly. So let's just do a quick storytelling, so not dwell too much too deep into it.
You want me to take them through it, or you want to lead this, Preeti? Either or.
Either way, you can start off. I'll come in.
All right. So I'm sure everyone here has heard about Bits Pilani. It's a household name. It's known for science and technology. They've grown. They've been around from the 60s, and they came to us a couple of years ago, just after the pandemic had hit, and said, "Listen, we want to create a world-class brand identity in a brand really for a world-class institute." So we said, okay, this is definitely something that we can help you out with. But essentially, just like you guys are studying a differentiated MBA program at BITS Pilani, at WeSchool, BITS Pilani also wanted to do things differently. First off, they wanted to include design thinking in the curriculum. They were looking at different ways of implementing education. So instead of doing the semester system, they wanted to do something slightly different, which was more around, the sort of like 2 week intensive modules. Also concentrate a little more on data science and technology because that's really where the world is moving towards. And on the other hand, in India, there seems to be a dearth of uh, international level business schools. There are the IIMs, the ISPs, schools like yours, and a few others. But beyond that, there are, what we call them are corporate farms, where tons and tons of students go in, they pay lakhs of rupees to learn something, and at the end of the day, they come out with, with bare essential knowledge and experience. So Bitsom or Bits Pilani really wanted to create a management school that was unique, that was different, unlike anything else that had ever been seen before, and also really harp on these new USPs that the school would be offering. So essentially, there is another point I'd like to make here is that every single time a science and technology institute has launched an MBA program in India, it has never worked out. The IITs have tried, the RECs have tried, all the top premier engineering schools have tried launching their own MBA programs. But there's a reason why their engineering programs are sought after and their MBA programs are not. So this was really a challenge that was thrown on our sort of laps, saying that we wanted to create something new, something unique, at the same time something slightly differentiated, which builds on the builds on the legacy of Bits Pilani, but is also its own business school in its own way. So for us, we started right at the top. We, like Preeti took you through the process that we follow. We start by understanding who our audience is and understanding what our vision is. Our audience for a B school is primarily, divided into two segments: the primary audience and the secondary audience. Your primary audience are, of course, the best students there are, the best recruiters, and the best faculty across the world. And in terms of a secondary audience, it's pretty much everyone else: parents, mentors, coaches, media and influencers, industry and think tanks, various other institutes who you may want to partner with, the social sector, government, so on and so forth. So for us, it was very important to understand our core target audience, which is essentially students like yourselves, people born between the years 1995 and 2010, Gen Z, driven by purpose, very savvy with technology, have a global outlook, and essentially they are people who are looking to learn, very hungry, very passionate for global experiences. They want to change the world, and they want to do it in their own way. So for us, it was very important to understand the mindset of the people that we were going to be selling, so to speak, selling these courses to. And we spoke with a lot of different people. So I'm going to skip through a few slides. We spoke to a lot of different people, internal stakeholders, and we did a lot of workshops as well to identify certain internal characteristics. Now, when you're building a new brand, it's really important to check mark or tick mark all the different aspects of brand strategy. Brand strategy is more art than science, but what it is a set of tools, is a set of tenets, is a set of aspects of your brand that help you define who you are and what you do. It's as simple as answering those two questions. So one of those things is called the brand archetype. Now, the brand archetype, as you see on screen, is comprised of 12 different segments. Each segment correlates to a certain characteristic, to a certain, and that in turn defines a personality, a behavior, and an attitude for the brand. Brands like Apple are a creator brand archetype. Brands like a Nike are a hero brand archetype. Brands like Dove, which lead with intimacy, lead with emotion, romance, are a lover brand archetype. So on and so forth. There are like a Woodlands brand, for instance, or a Decathlon, Quechua is an explorer brand archetype because they're pushing you to towards exploring the world. So like this, we were able to define our archetype, which was the creator. We also then were able to map our personality. This is essentially, if brands were human beings, what would he or she be like? It's as simple as answering that question. So you're trying to create a well-rounded personality, because the more clarity you have on who you are, the better you will communicate, the better people that are handling your brand will be able to help your brand communicate. And not just your personality, but what's more important is, are your core values. You need a set of guiding principles, you need a set of guiding values for your brand to navigate anything, and adhering to values help you overcome complex challenges, help you make difficult decisions, help you stay the course of whatever you set out to do over a period of time. So we were able to do this through workshops, through internal sessions. We also spoke to several different external stakeholders. Now, we had very little time to do this. So we spoke and picked up the phone and got on video calls and met people in person, spoke to students and parents across the board, pre-MBA students, current MBA students in leading institutes, as well as MBA graduates in India and abroad. We spoke to faculty. Some of these faculty teach at Ivy League universities, right? And they were people who were going to come on board as BITSOM faculty. We spoke to corporate recruiters as to what they expected, what they wanted from potential B school students. And also, some of y'all may have written the GMAT. Well, it's created by a company called GMAC. We also spoke to people at GMAC to understand what are the influencing factors. And through all of this, we were able to identify mine key insights. I'm not going to spend too much time there, and put these insights together to really derive a pattern, one key insight. As an institute, we're aiming to redefine paradigms of quality education using innovative techniques, evolutionary thinking, and future mapping. We're bringing in data, science, technology into a traditional management curriculum. We're imparting these courses in a different way, and we're doing things in a way unlike ever before. And we're at the core of it all, we're also equipping deserving students with the right and relevant knowledge and skill sets. And the outcome essentially is to enable them to be holistic leaders, to be ethical people, to have lateral thinking capabilities, so that they cannot just become CEOs, they cannot just become managers, they cannot just become entrepreneurs, but something larger than that. They can actually move on to becoming game changers in an ever changing world. And what we did was we took these insights, and we also sort of delved a little deeper into the program structure of BitSom. It is something that really helps you address the left as well as the right sides of the brain. How through all these different things, they're addressing the knowledge bit as well as shaping your personality and your mindset. And this is really something that would help BitSom make a switch from being just another new MBA school or MBA program into a relevant, holistic, and global business school. Relevant meaning it's important that you're teaching and imparting curriculum which is relevant in today's day and age, and not something that was relevant 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Holistic, because you're looking and adhering to every, a well-rounded aspect, not just the physical, but also the mental, not just the sort of studies, but also the personality. And global, because it's really important to be on par. If you're going to graduate from here and are looking for work in the Western world, in Dubai, and wherever else, it's important that you're in touch with facts, with knowledge that is on par with what global B schools are imparted. So this was the proposition that we carved out. This is really a brand promise. We are a globally relevant evolutionary business and life school for the visionary leaders of tomorrow. And we also articulated our vision and mission. We looked at all the top B schools from various different places, international, Indian, and we were able to craft our vision and mission. The difference between the two is a mission is really something that could evolve over time, is a little more short-sighted, is a little more focused at what you're trying to do. Whereas a vision is, as the name indicates, it's more visionary, it's more long-term. It's really what you want to do on a larger scale. So through again, this was something that we crafted for them, and then we were showing you the brand compass earlier. This is really what it's divided into. It's three components. The top bit really helps me identify who I am, what I stand for, what I'm here to do. The central component helps me define core aspects to take into the branding for, for my brand. And the last bit really helps me communicate, build my communication from here. So this was, Pragati was the working name that we had, but this is the whole brand compass that's filled up. We've gone over the vision, the mission, the values, the brand archetype, the personality, the brand promise or proposition, and these are other things that we do collaboratively. What are our USPs? What are functional? What are emotional? Who are our different audience sets? So on and so forth. And what emerged from here was the design manifestation. Now, of course, we took so many different aspects into branding. We had various different sort of iterations, explorations, so on and so forth. But the winning route, the winning concept, which is really what the Britsom brand is comprised of, builds itself on legacy and heritage, the association with BITS Pilani in terms of credibility and trust, and also focus on holistic as well as multidimensional and leadership. So our creative approach was, Preeti, you wanna take us through this?
Sure. So what we did really was that since we were talking about something which had legacy, go forward, please. You know, we're talking about delving into the legacy of a brand which has existed, but at the same time, it wants to move into a new zone, into more contemporary zone. So there is a imagery, iconography called heraldry, and you would notice that a lot of this has been used not just abroad but also within India. That certain kind of animals have been used along shields and so on to create a kind of a philosophy mark for which creates a mark, like an emblem, so to speak. For it could be families, it could be individuals, it could be companies. And some of this continues even in today's world. And of course it's there for India as well. For example, these are all current brands which have used it. So all of the thinking that Rahul took you through, we said that whatever it is, an institution requires legacy for people to take it seriously. But at the same time, we're talking to a far more contemporary, younger sort of a target audience. So how do we actually merge the two? Going forward, let's move forward. So we said, if we were to identify the kind of an element that we want to use, an animal that would represent who we are is a tiger. Tiger is sitting at the apex of the ecosystem, plays a pivotal role in maintaining the balance and diversity of the ecosystem. Globally, tiger is known for its unique leadership style and is also a symbol of protection, courage, and wisdom. So we felt that that's an animal that we certainly identified with. I think, can we do something with this? And meanwhile, if you see, tiger has also been used a lot in our Indian mythology, Indian even in certain spiritual and religious aspects also use the tiger. Going forward, we said that the tiger, but if there was another element, we said we identified as the sun because of the close association of Aditya Birla Group with this, and Aditya means the sun. So the sun rising above everything else, spreading its light far and wide, It's a source of continuous development, continuous learning, and continuous enlightening as well. So we said this is again a symbol which is a very positive and strong symbol. So can we do something with these two? And then what we did was, here is what actually was created. So as you can see, we took the tiger, we integrated the sun into the tiger's face, and then but as you can see, it's an extremely modern form of heraldry. So this is really what we did. And then we took it forward into all of its brand extensions. We identified primary color palette, and each of the colors stand for something. We then went into the logo itself and created an iconography, a whole language. So on patterns and handles to help us storytell. For example, going forward, so you can see there are different patterns. Zooming into the logo gave us another idea of how we can use a design language, because along with a brand mark, there should be a design language which also helps in creating a certain vibrant environment within which your brand mark lives. Going forward, and then we took, going forward, all of this was then manifested into signage systems, which were then used within the space, all sorts of manifestations in the environment, immediate environment, in the sign systems, in showcasing your vision mission statements, and integrating it also into the internal language of the environment as well. So as you can see, it's come alive so very vibrantly. So important thing here is that all of these elements which got designed created a whole look. Not just that, but also we suggested that the architects also work along with the brand guidelines so they can integrate some of these branding elements into the actual structure and the interior designing itself. So these are some suggestive elements that we had. Going forward, we also then created a communication campaign. So we launched the ad, Now, remember what Rahul had shown you was the entire strategic process, research process, data gathering process, and the insights we got from that, speaking to several different audiences, okay? The important thing to remember is that process gave birth to a certain logo mark, and that gave birth to a whole identity. Then that has now gone into the next logical step, which is the communication, which is the messaging that you're going to put out into the world with the objective of getting people to come and join your institution. Now, when you've aligned every aspect, every dimension of this process, what you get is a very successful brand launch. And that's exactly what happened here. Once this ad was launched, not just in print, but also digitally, there were videos that were created as well. Just go forward. So I don't want to dwell into the details, but the results were quite phenomenal. Rahul, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so for our first 2 weeks, I think we got 1 lakh unique hits per day. They were looking at getting 3,000 shortlisted applicants for the maiden year. They not just crushed that, sort of target, but they went over and above that. And since then, of course, I think June, July last year's when they started their classes, they've had an overwhelming response. So much so that for the second year, they barely did any communication, barely did any, they didn't do an ad or anything like that, and organically were able to land, their second year as well. So far, so good. The Bitsom success story continues, and we're, happy to help them along the way.
So Piyush, this is therefore a case study of design thinking that you're talking about. How we the process and the manifestation and the results. Do we have any questions at this point in time from anyone?
Students, yeah, please ask. There is one question, Preeti. I'll just hand over the mic.
Please.
Thank you for the session. I had a question. So, why do brands first want to reach out the mass audience and then rebrand itself in terms of logo or packaging? So, is it just to impress the investors as they have already built a brand awareness, or like what is the need that they have to rebrand itself even after having a good mass reach?
Well, several things. There are many factors that happen. I mean, when you have, for example, let's take a brand like Pepsi. Okay, it has gone through brand changes. Sometimes these brand changes are radical. Sometimes these brand changes are incremental. And usually the reason is that there is some. I have always felt that when a brand wants to change, it's because there is a business reason to do so. Either it's expanding into different zones, or it's finding that the brand is communicating up to a point but not does not go the whole hog, in the sense that when the brand started out at a certain point in time in its life, the audiences were of a certain kind. The environment, the target audience environment has changed, and sometimes that starts the old way of doing things starts affecting the way people are perceiving the brand. So very often it's about keeping pace with change, and often enough also it's because the brand itself is looking at a different business trajectory. For example, there could some businesses might want to expand into different zones, and they may find that the current branding they have, although it has a fairly well entrenched recall, that does not have the bandwidth to embrace everything that it will want to do tomorrow. So often that happens. Often also what happens is brands grow organically, businesses grow organically. They grow in a, let's say there's a cement company, which also, let's say, gets into textiles, and then also gets into retail, consumer facing retail. And each time it's done its own thing. It's got its own brand, it's got its own personality. But what it's not doing is it's because you took a very fragmented approach, you forgot that there is a mother brand, and the mother brand had been around much longer and has the credibility which is helping people understand and believe in the new business that you are putting out. So what often happens is that a new logo comes up, and then somewhere you will have the old logo because they realize, good God, I mean, my trust and belief is vested with the old another logo because my I'm known. Okay, let's say imagine, let's take Godrej. Okay, now imagine Godrej is known. Now, if or let's actually closer home, take something which is closer home to me is, let's say, take Tata's and Taj. When Tata's decided that they wanted to create a brand identity across board. Some companies they were able to, and some companies they were not able to straddle the entire the brand mark. For example, Taj they couldn't do it. They couldn't call it Tata Taj. Taj had its own branding because it had taken its own journey, it had its own personality, but they had forgotten that the word Tata adds a lot of credibility. Taj, of course, does, but Tata adds tremendous amount of credibility. Now, for example, if you take housing, real estate in a zone where you may come out saying that I am X brand of real estate, will that have enough trust, or will a brand this is Tata Housing have more trust? So sometimes brands organically grow, and then you have to herd them back and then realign these names as well. In fact, we had to do that for Aditya Birla Group, and I can quickly share that case study with you as well. So all sorts of scenarios happen. And when that happens, we have to create a whole brand architecture where somewhere, for example, Tata Steel is Tata Steel, and it's Taj Hotels from the House of Tatas, or brand Zoya, which is a jewelry brand, but they end up saying a Tata product. Why? Because Zoya is not trusted, but Tata is trusted. You know, so these are then afterthoughts. So what we would recommend is that we would like to, when we work with clients, we recommend that they build in a scalable brand identity so that when they actually grow, when they expand, uh, things just don't get fragmented and lose the branding opportunities which is typically available to them. So that's what it's a very good question that you've asked. Would you like to see the a case study which could be talking about that?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Rahul, shall we show the Aditya Birla Group case study?
Just a second, please.
So the point you explained, Preeti, does it connect with the rebranding of Aditya Birla, which you've done? It's becoming an iconic symbol now.
So yeah, the thing is that Aditya Birla Group is a group. Its companies are different, and the thing is that okay, let me just start with the beginning. Okay, so we've been the brand custodians for since inception and since Aditya Birla Group's inception as well. So when the brief was given to us that Mr. Birla said that can we do the logo, immediately my take was that there is a shift. There's a management shift in the company, which is why they're asking for it. Okay, so go forward. I'll just talk through the whole thing. So it's essentially a company which Birlas have existed. Aditya Birla Group did not exist. Having said, Aditya, founder of this group, he had launched several companies, and most of them were listed companies in India, and none of them carried the name Birla or Aditya Birla in it. Okay, they're well-known companies. Okay, so when I was asked to do the entity for Aditya Birla Group, said that now that we have these various companies, we want to herd it together under the umbrella of Aditya Birla. So I suggested that let's do some research, and of course, at that point in time, the key audience for us was investors, retail and institutional shareholders. So we then launched a research here and abroad, and what came up was that I think the bill, of course, was not known, but Birla was known. So it came up because it was known, it was seen as big. Because it was big, it was seen as trusted because you're aware of it. It was seen as Indian, and we never thought back in the day as well that anything being Indian is bad. So we said, that's great, that's fine. But what was bad was that it was seen as an inaccessible, not transparent Marwadi company. Okay. Therefore, it was seen as old-fashioned, not in pace with international standards, innovation processes, and it hired, for example, only Marwadis. These are all perceptions which came out, and therefore it was seen, although it was wrong, therefore it was seen as having average quality. So our task as brand builders was to turn this around. The weaknesses had to be, turned into a brand which is transparent, which is communicated, and therefore seen as approachable. Certainly, infuse it with a lot of youthful energy, dynamic energy, and therefore be seen as a very, very competitive brand in the business universe of the country, as well as in certain markets abroad. So, so this helped us in identifying, this was a virtual group, right, the logo, but it has holdings and parts that are powerful because each of these companies were listed, right? And we had to therefore engineer a process of change, but process of change also through consensus. Large corporate organizations, you need to do these things, going forward. So we had to have, so several things happened as an offshoot of this whole process, governance, just go back, yeah. So investor cell was set up, not that we did it, but the thing is once you start a dialogue, the company, the corporate also starts thinking in a certain way, So it became very important, part of the SEBI committees, It's very important that they adopt best processes and talked about them, and they hired, sort of business brains to align businesses, transition. This is kind of post license era. So then pre-license era businesses were structured differently, and post-license era businesses had to be restructured differently. So all of this started, and what is interesting is that I'm proud as designers we were able to ignite certain processes. Going forward. So once all this started, we of course had to do the mark. And, Aditya means the sun, which is the source of all beings, of energy, of life itself. And we said, marry that with a rendition that gives a young and energetic feel. So the first version of the logo was this, which is the sun, spokes going out, and then this, which is the energy of the group. And the internal spokes are about the energy which is of the individual companies, and there's a symbiotic dialogue that's going on between expression outside and business process inside. And Aditya Birla Group became is there as a presence, as a strapline, and then we aligned it with its. Go to the next slide, please. So this is the companies which existed before. So Grasim, Hindalco, SL Mining, Birla Global, Ultratech. None of these companies have Birla in their names. So therefore, we came in as an endorser brand. Grasim by Aditya Birla Group, Hindalco by Aditya Birla Group. Only thing we made sure was that the sun was present through this brand architecture. Going forward, some 7-8 years down the line, of course, we created the whole brand process, vision, mission, statement, all of this was done, manifested, some communication elements were done, we designed their management journals, and so the whole equipment of what the brand toolkit was actually created and communicated. So we needed to create awareness, introduce Aditya Birla Group, communicating diversity, geographical presence. This became very important. This is what we are Aditya Birla Group, and we are this big because individual companies are going to do their own talking. So this is one of the communication that we did. You want to show this?
Aditya Birla Group, taking India to the world.
So a single-minded message here was that we want to be seen as an Indian multinational. Okay, so this was when India's economy had opened up, and we therefore became one of the architects of New India. So the group had done some research about how this communication had impacted the perception, and what came up was that all the right values which we wanted were clearly working. I mean, that those associations had come to pass. We're seen as trustworthy, established, seen as global. Imagine, I mean, Aditya Birla Group, Birlas have existed for over a century. Aditya Birla Group has existed for all of 25, 26 years. Okay, so to be seen as vis-a-vis the bigger players, Tata Group, we were seeing level of familiarity. Aditya Birla Group went up. That point in time, I'm talking about Reliance Industries. So you can see that from being a new kid on the block, we were suddenly rubbing shoulders with the existing giants in the business. So this is what happens when you do your branding right. And you have somebody, the client's end, who understands the power of branding and is consistently stays with it. And I have to say, Aditya Birla Group has done that. And then in 2011, we realized through their own studies, they realized that we were actually seen as one of the most trusted brands. It become actually a super brand. And therefore, when you become a super brand, A lot of the what also came out is that the newer businesses of the group, they wanted to be associated with Aditya Birla. They didn't want a different name. They said, why should we when we can just call ourselves Aditya Birla because everybody trusts that. Okay, so therefore, from being architects of a global India, the switch was a powerhouse across the globe and across sectors. And so this became the second messaging that came out. And we said that now this requires a brand refreshment. We're still in the same zone, but we need to actually pump up the brand power. And this is what we did. This was a logo version 1. We changed it to logo version 2. We made it stronger, bolder, but most importantly, what we did was the brand architecture changed. Brand architecture, whereas before it was the companies were the heroes and we were the strapline, we now became the hero, and the companies, although very powerful, were followed the brand mark, the overall umbrella branding of Aditya Birla. So this is from a brand perspective a huge shift, which means that your mother brand, which came in from nowhere, has taken over, superseded all the other companies which existed. They were power brands in their own rights. Going forward, and of course the whole brand manifestation that happened. So going forward to the next lot, so we said, let's talk a little bit about what we do. So let's not show the films here, Rahul. So
Sure.
we talked about who we are, what are the different sectors. So the communication continued, and then we then came to a place where the group in 2016 had grown even more, had diversified even more. So much so that from when it started out 26 years ago, it was 2 billion. It was then at that point in time in 2016, 41 billion. I think now it's even more. Average age at that time was 56 years. The average age had dropped to 36 years. And predominantly it was B2B businesses, largely in commodities, to actually becoming one of India's largest consumer-facing conglomerates. So very, very diverse businesses. So the brand vision had evolved, and also what was required, therefore, maybe a new mark, to mark a new milestone. So then what we did was, this is the mark that was created. This is the most recent mark, so it is still within the zone of the sun. But as you can see, there is a bigger shift over here. Okay, and then of course it was matched with all the brand communication and the brand identity program and all of that needs to happen. And now we're at a stage where we're saying that the brand itself should talk about we've spoken about, we are architects of New India. We've talked about who we are, what we do. We've told you about how omnipresent we are. We touch your life just about every second of every day by all the such stuff that we do. So what next? I would say what next is actually the most important phase in their lives, which is that it's not just about sectors and scales and how we pervade your lives, but it is what is it that we do for you, the kind of value that we will bring. So we are a big part of every life, but what is the value that we bring into your life? So we're jumping a lot of slides. It's a very long case study. But this is the most current one, which is talking about, we are big. There's a giant over here. But he's a friendly, empathetic, compassionate giant. And so let's show the film and then we'll tell you what he's doing. You can see for yourself.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet so that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. every single day. Aditya Bilagu, big in your life.
So, in a sense, this is the current sort of communication trajectory we're in. Is that, if we are sorry, I have to just plug in my my laptop. It is going to collapse on me. Um, so, so it's important for us to understand that brands, are verbs. They're not nouns. They're constantly moving. And in order for a brand to become successful and stay successful, you have to constantly evolve with the way the world is evolving, the way the world is talking. And most importantly, brands have to be about not just about how great they are, but very importantly, what are the brands doing for you, for the consumer, for the customer? What is the value that they're bringing in? Otherwise, you just remain in a very arrogant zone about this is how big we are and this is how great we are, and nobody wants to know how great you are. Everybody wants to know about what are you doing for us as your consumers, what are you doing for people and the planet and the economy. These are important statements, and this is where brands should transition to very, very importantly. So this, as you saw, companies which had formed on their own, had existed on their own, but the brand mark pulls it together, the brand mark itself changes. So it's a continuous process. So, and it still works. You can actually, whilst changing something which has been around for a while, if you do it well, you can make it work. Does it answer your question?
Any more questions? Yeah, Puberun.
Hi, ma'am. So I wanted to know what is the importance of color palette and how do you decide on the color palette? And my second question is, when brands change their color palette for certain products, do you think it affects the overall brand personality? So like, for example, if you take Coke, we usually resonate Coke with the color red. But when they launched Coke Zero, they had a black color palette. So do you think it affects the overall brand personality if we change the color palette?
Of course it does. So all colors have a purpose, all colors have an impact, and all colors tell a story. And colors also have associations, right? I mean, brand associations. For example, you will notice a lot of food products typically have a lot of red because, let's say, a blue doesn't quite associate well with it. But having said that, if something is, like a black color has its own associations. So, I'm not quite sure why they did what they did, but the kind of companies you're talking about, they would have definitely researched these things before implementing them. Some of these international companies have very robust pre-launch processes where they do a lot of testing, and in the test, if it doesn't come out well, then they actually change not just the branding, but actually product itself is scrapped. So there would have been a reason. Color palettes are very important. Identifying the right color palette and also identifying its usage philosophy is equally important. Uh, uh, color palettes are derived also, like if you saw the processes that we took you through, if once you arrive at who you want to become as a company, as a brand, that itself will suggest colors. It will suggest equally colors which you associate well with, and that it will also tell you these are colors to stay away from. So there is always a science behind these. There should be a science behind these choices to be made. So at least the way we work, I can't speak for other designers, but the way we work is that we have the process in place because that process helps us in identifying and making the right choices as far as the visual design goes.
Preeti, colors for designers and colors for managers, how would you differentiate?
It's really colors for designers. For example, I'm designing, but I'm not designing for myself. If I were designing for myself, then I'm my own target audience, and I will go with the colors which I identify most with. So I would say in a professional environment, it's dictated by what the brand is wanting to communicate, and it dictates the color and it dictates the form as well.
Any questions from students? Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, you said that 80% of the future revenue would come from 20% of the current customers. Could you please elaborate on that a bit more?
I think that, what was really said over there is that you need to make sure that you are talking to your customers, you have a conversation with them, you're hearing them, you're listening to them, because these are the customers who will stay with you. And often these customers not just stay with you, but they also talk well about you. And therefore, uh, customer retention, creating customer joy, is very, very important, because some of the customers may drop off down the line, but your core customers will remain with you and they will become your evangelists. So it's very important to ensure that at every interface you have with your customer, you never know which is going to be that customer who will speak well for you, and will make sure that you get more customers. That's what we meant.
Any questions, students? You won't get a second chance to uh, have such a close discussion with such a star personality. Please ask. Yeah. One more question, Preeti. Please wait.
Sure, sure.
Uh, Thank you for the session, ma'am. Actually, I wanted to know if you can share some failure stories where the client wanted a certain kind of work and that couldn't be delivered. And then what are the mitigations that you followed so that you can bring on the good work? So you can just share that failure experience. That would be great.
Uh, hmm. What you're saying is that if something we've created has not worked and we have to go back to the drawing board, is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
and a prototype. Yes.
Rahul, can you think of anything? Rahul, are you there? I can't think of anything.
This was sounding boastful. I don't. Our process is um, kind of foolproof in that sense because we do a lot of research and immersion, and that's what really sets us apart. But in terms of clients behaving funny, brief changing, all of that, that happens.
That
I think
happens. So yeah, that's what I clarified.
that's
So
the
yeah, sometimes when we have created a whole solution, then they say, oh, but actually we've changed our requirements entirely. When that happens, then everything has to change. But that's not because we've done something which has not worked in the marketplace. That hasn't happened. So I have to say, can't recall anything of that sort. But I think no. But what I would say is that internally, before the work is seen by external audience, we have a lot of internal processes. So when we are presenting to the client sometimes might not like what we've done at all. Although that's also quite rare, but that could have happened, and we would then have had to go back and understood the brief a little bit more and create a different expression. That would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions, students? Any questions?
One last question from my end. I think for the on behalf of everyone there, what words of advice would you give to our young design thinkers and MBA grads from your years and years of experience as an entrepreneur?
I was about to ask that question. Just on the verge of it.
Really. Okay, so I think that I strongly believe that you have in the book, and then you have to forget them, okay? Because in order for you to become a true innovator, true design thinker, you need to think from a vantage point which has no boundaries of anything, nothing that's holding you back. That this is right and this is wrong. You internalize everything that you've learned, internalize all the processes. At least that's what's worked for me. Okay, that then I'm able to think not like a designer, not like a business strategist, not like a consumer. I just think like a creative person at large, and that makes me come to perspectives and points of views which are very different from the expected. Often the solutions which we offer are so vastly different, not really quite the expected ones, and sometimes exceed the brief. We have actually given recommendations which are in the marketing zone, which is clearly not something that we are technically qualified to do, but we do that. So we overshoot the brief only because this is the way we think and we work. And I would recommend that as people who are learning and who will be soon stepping out into the world, learn diligently for sure, but don't stop thinking big. Okay. Whilst you're looking at people's case studies, don't be bound by their languages, because the environment you will step out in will be very different from the environment in which those case studies were created. When they were created, those audiences were also different. You also, I feel, need to, in my opinion, be global travelers. When I mean global travelers, I mean mental travelers. Physically, of course, you will travel everywhere. But you must understand, although you're not designers, understand and learn design principles. Understand politics, understand philosophies, understand spirituality, understand, what is luxury in the new post-COVID era. There is so much information out there. So don't become desk rats. Okay, make your world very, very large. Absorb a lot of information from around the world, and let that excite you as individuals, not as just career path seekers, but as individuals. Very important to do that. And most importantly, to have humility. Just because you are going to be graduates from a great institution, that doesn't mean you conquer the world. There's so much more learning that's going to happen. After you graduate, have the attitude of being, I'm sorry, there's some noise going on, but you need to have an attitude of being humble, learning from different voices, from unexpected sources. So, and never say this is not my job. That's how I learned. That's how I worked. I graduated from NID, and I was walking walk 6 inches above the ground, but I was soon brought down to earth by my mentors, and I was okay with becoming the receptionist and becoming the chai wali and all of that. And it's very important that you remain humble, because that's the only way you will learn. And had I not done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I think this is what I can think of.
Marvelous.
One last thing. Most importantly, work for yourself, work for your own fulfillment. You should be able to be happy with what you're working with, what you're doing. Because if you're not happy with what you're doing, then there's no point doing anything at all. So work towards that, okay?